Hey guys! Welcome back to another episode of Art and Recap. I'm your artist Faye, and today we are reading chapter 152 till 156 of Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 152 is called Nice Attempt. So in this chapter, we actually find Klein at the Grey Fog area where we left off earlier, and he was like testing out actually how to summon himself. He's like doing the rituals that Dali taught him and saying a phrase that he needs to say, of course, to, summon himself. So he was doing that, and just to be sure, he actually also divined if it's dangerous to, summon himself from the real world if he's from the Grey Fog area. His divination told him that he can go ahead. It's not dangerous at all. So he goes back to the real world and then starts summoning himself. But then he's like, wait, nothing's happening. What's going on? So he thinks, and his big brain was like, oh, you know what? It actually makes sense that nothing is happening because nobody is answering at the Grey Fog area because nobody's home. So he actually goes back to the Grey Fog area and realizes that his chair is actually glowing. And he's like, oh, this is new. I've never seen this before. And also he points out that there's a sign on top of the chair, because you know how every chair that has a Beyonder on it actually has a sign that indicates their Beyonder pathway. His is a pupilless eye and contorted lines that represented change. I thought when I read this, I thought it was very, very fitting for the seer pathway because again, the pupilless eye is like indicating, it says here on the book, it indicates concealment, like it represents concealment. But for me, I think it's more like how the seer pathway is. Basically, it's an eye with pupil that is pupilless, because for seer pathway, they're like all-seeing, like they're like all-knowing, but at the same time, they're blinded. They cannot see everything because there are so many pathways, and that contorted lines that represent change is like all the timelines that they could be seeing, right? Which is kind of like very fascinating for me because this tells me that if you're like a high level seer, you can probably see different timelines from different places, and I feel that's possible somehow. I don't know. I just find this symbolism very fascinating, and I wanted to tell you guys my thoughts about it. Anyway, he enters again. He is at the fog area, and he's like, okay, my chair is glowing, what now? So he sits down, and it's like, oh, there's a door there now, what the hell, when did that appear? Right? So he's like, okay, fascinating. So he actually goes to the door and tries to open it, but he couldn't, because again, he realizes, hey, is it possible that the reason I cannot enter through is because Klein, my summoner, basically is too weak, right? And when I was reading that, I was also thinking, is it not also because you're kind of a god in this area? Like, is also my thought. Like, if he opens that door, isn't it like equivalent to a god descending down? But then I realized, hey, in the Donghua, he actually did manage to pull this stunt off, right? He did the summoning thingy and became kind of like a spirit to spy on this witch lady. I forgot her name, but you guys know who I mean. So I was like, okay, so that's definitely not possible. But it was a thought that popped up in my head when I was reading this. So yeah, he failed, and he's like, you know what, I'll try it once sequence 8. It will definitely work out. Very positive of you, Klein. And then afterwards, Klein goes to sleep, and we get a filler section. I think it's not really a filler chapter. I wanted to say filler chapter, but then I was like, wait, no, it's not a filler chapter. But this section here just feels a lot like a filler, because in this section of the chapter is basically Captain Dunes visiting Klein in his sleep again, and Klein is just sitting at the sofa reading a newspaper, and Captain Dunes just waltzes into his living room, sits down on the sofa, and just stares at him, and Klein is like, okay, what is going on? He's like, this is making me very uncomfortable. And he's like hoping that Captain Dunes just goes away, because again, it's like your boss is in your dream staring at you. Like, that is a nightmare. So when Captain Dunes did live after, of course, Klein cleaned up his whole house in his dream, Klein was like, this is an actual nightmare. What the fuck? And yeah, that checks out. And then we change the scene and go to Backlund, West Backlund at Philip's department store. And when I was reading this section, I was like, wait, because this Philip department store is like a top end, only open to nobles and wealthy people kind of department store. And I was like thinking, wait a second, why is my friend Klein, the brokey, in here? Like, what's going on? Because my mind kind of glossed over the fact that we're in Backlund. So in my mind, I was thinking that this department store is still in Tingen and Klein was there for some goddamn reason. And I was like, what's going on here? Why is my broke friend Klein here? Then I continued reading, and turns out it was actually Audrey's POV. She was there to actually have a secret meeting with CEO Derecha. In this meeting, actually, CEO Derecha, it's not like she's working at the department store. She actually had to somehow bribe the attendant there so that she can take her shift, so that she can meet with Audrey in secret. And yeah, that is how they planned this, I guess. And Audrey is there to give CEO Derecha a mission, which is to find the Admiral Chilangos. And she's like, yeah, if you actually manage to find this Admiral, they are searching for him, and the person who finds him and helps in his arrest will be awarded 10,000 pounds for Chilangos, right? And the people who actually has, information for and provided clues, they will definitely be awarded a few £100. That's how much they want this guy. And Shidorage is like, say no more, sister, that guy, we will find him for sure. And that is how chapter 152 ends. Chapter 153, Final Act of Laying the Foundation. Basically, we start off the chapter with CEO Derecha's POV. She is actually with force walls in a room. I don't know. We didn't really get a description of where they are, but they're basically just chilling in like a living room. And CEO Derecha was memorizing Chilango's face, because again, Audrey got her this portrait of Chilangos that Audrey drew herself, by the way. And she's like memorizing his face, but then she's like, why am I memorizing this guy's face when he can transform into anybody he wants? Like, the fuck, this is useless, right? And she's like, how are we supposed to find this guy? Does Audrey think we're prophets? What the fuck? And then she realizes, oh hey, there's actually a footnote on the portrait, and Audrey wrote that, again, there's like hints that she gave them, mainly that Chilangos has this evil artifact with him, and that the evil artifact actually needs to eat basically humans, not eat per se, but it needs to kill basically. And that she was telling them to actually search for vagrants as a hint, and that even though Chilangos can change his face, that doesn't mean his habits and the way he eats and whatever his hobbies change. He's still him. It's just his face is changed. So watch out for people with suspicious gaits and this and that, That's the kind of hints that she was giving them. And also she wrote to them that she actually wants them to compile the information about Chilangos for her. And Force is like, you know what, this Audrey is actually she's not as innocent and naive as the rumors suggest. Also, she said that Audrey is a teen. How old is Audrey? I thought she was at least in her 20s. Has it been mentioned how old Audrey is? It can't be that she's 17, right? She's at least 19, right? Yeah. So they were doing that, and Shio is like, you know what? You compile all this info. I will do the search for him. Again, you do the paperwork stuff. And Force is like, wait, why are we doing this menial task? Why don't we just hire people to do it? And we are just going to tell them that it's not the Chilangos guy that we're searching for, but some random dude, and we'll just erase their name from the info that we have, and yeah, still get the money, right? And she was like, you know what, you are fucking brilliant, that's why I love you. She didn't say that, but these two girls, they're giving lesbian vibes. They're just, I don't know why, but they are giving me Bonnie and Clyde kind of vibes. Just they're both girls. Anyway, they are like, okay, let's do it like that, like you suggested, let's hire someone. And that's how they agreed to it. And also, I think it was Theodoracia, she said like, you're paying for this, you know that, right? And then we get on to Klein's POV again. He is actually at the Divination Club, which is a surprise to Angelica because Klein doesn't really come to the Divination Club on Fridays, but Klein is like, I actually was in the area. He didn't say this to Angelica, but he was thinking, I was actually just in the area. He was searching for the red chimneys again, and also the carriage that he rented, it already expired in the area. So he's like, you know what, I'll go to the Divination Club and chill out for a bit, have some tea over there, instead of going home directly, because why not, he's already there and he doesn't have to pay for tea, so why not, right? And then he also tells Angelica that, hey, he also mentions to Angelica that he's not gonna come as often as before in the future, because again, he's going to become a clown and he won't need to be divining people's future anymore. And he was also thinking, if I actually asked for £1 for divination, I would still continue coming here, but because he said that he's not gonna charge more, he stopped coming. So yeah, of course he didn't mention that to Angelica, because again, he is trying to give off this very mature guy kind of vibes, right? So anyway, he goes back home and he opens his mailbox and finds that he has a letter from Mr. Asic, and apparently Mr. Asic is in Morristown, and that's when he realized, oh, Mr. Asic is gonna do the thing that I asked him to do, which is terrorize some innocent people. And according to how the grapevine works in the Nighthawks, this information will get to them at around Wednesday, so like a week from then. So it's going to be like the perfect timing from then on, right? So anyway, Saturday afternoon, Klein goes to the Blackthorn Security Company, aka the Nighthawks, and he actually just chatted with Roseanne and mentions that he went to the Divination Club because he wanted to hint to Captain Dunes that he actually has digested his potion again, right? So after that chatter, he goes to Captain Dunes and was like, Captain, I think I am ready to submit a special application. Chapter 154 is called Sharing Experience. So Captain Dunes is like, are you sure about that? When Klein mentioned that he wants to apply for, the sequence 8 potion stuff. And Klein's like, yes, Captain, I am very much sure about this because I have felt the magical sensation that you get when you fully digest the potion. And Captain Dune is like, wait, what do you mean magical sensation? Because we find out here that Captain Dune's actually never fully digested his potions, even though he advanced twice already. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But then Captain Dune is like, maybe it would be best if you wait for another year, actually, because even though he trusts Klein and that Klein really fully digested the potion, he's feeling suspicious about the church, right? And Klein also understands that that's what the captain meant. But Klein's like, Captain, I would like to mention that there is all of these weird coincidences that happened the last 2 months. It's kind of very strange and I feel very much targeted. Well, he didn't say that he feels targeted, but he says that it's very suspicious, and Captain Dun's like, that's very perceptive of you, and yes, it is very much suspicious. Okay, I will let you write your submission letter, okay? And Klein's like, oh, awesome, thank you, Captain. So he runs, well, he didn't really run, but he goes over to the office where there's like a typewriter, and he greets the two new clerks, and the two new clerks was like, hey, what's up? But then they notice that Klein's like focusing on his work also, and that he kind of needs his privacy, because again, it's like a super important document that he's writing. So they bounce. They leave Klein to his own matter, and while Klein is writing, Leonard comes out of the restroom. This made me laugh. Leonard comes out of the restroom to go bother Klein, and he was buttoning his shirt as he looked around. And I was like, Leonard, why are you buttoning your shirt? What did you do in the restroom? What the fuck? Leonard! What's going on? Also, Klein mentioned here that there was an unrestrained beauty in his messy hair. And I was like, ooh. Yes, yes, it made me giggle when I read that. So Leonard's like, what's the report you're writing about, Klein? What's you doing there? And Klein's like, oh, I am writing the special application. And Leonard's like, wait, special application? You're already done digesting your potion? What the fuck, bro? And Klein, upon hearing that, was like, digest? Leonard, you know more than you let on. What the hell's going on here? Lily. So, Klein's like, yeah, remember when you said that there are special people out there? Like you and me? And Leonard's like, yeah. So this actually left Leonard speechless because it's kind of like a reminder to him that, hey, they agreed that they won't be in each other's business when it comes to stuff like this. So he's like, don't you think that it's too risky? He asked instead. And Klein's like, not really, because he gets what Leonard's trying to tell him, that it's risky because, you know, the upper management from the church might look at Klein and be like, what's this guy still? Why is he like this? Right? So he's like, okay, well, now that you have that done, again, Klein finished writing up his application, and Leonard's like, well, now that you're finished with that, aren't you going to share your experience with us? So he dragged Klein over to the recreational room with all the other Beyonders except Royale. Royale was guarding the Chinese gate, and it was like, okay, Klein, you can tell it to them now. And Klein had to explain that, of course, he was actually gonna get promoted. Basically, he's going to get his sequence 8 potion because he just finished writing up his special application. And Leonard, of course, told everyone that Klein finished digesting his potion, right? But they didn't believe that at first, until Klein, of course, agreed with Leonard, because they thought that Leonard was being dramatic again. So yeah, Klein explains to them about, yada yada yada, how he was inspired by the maxim of the mystery prior, and how he was also inspired by Miss Dolly and was basically following in her footsteps, and this and that. He was trying to give them hints without outright saying that it's acting, that he's doing the acting method, right? So he's like, okay, you guys stew on that information. I'm gonna go to the captain and give him my application. Chapter 155 is called Urgent Meeting. So in this chapter, we actually find Klein going to the Chinese gate to relieve Royale of her duty because it's now his turn to guard the Chinese gate. But at the same time, he also told Royale about what he told the others about, being inspired by the mystery priors and Madame Dali, yada yada yada, how he did all that and now he can advance. Well, he applied to advance to sequence 8 clown potion, right? And Royale's like, whoa, that's crazy, bro. And then she left. So Klein was doing his job, and then old Neil pops up and was like, Klein, what the hell? Okay, he didn't really say that, but he's like, Klein, is it true? Is it true that you were inspired by the mystery priors and Madame Dali and whatever the other people are saying, and that you're now applying to become a sequence 8? And Klein's like, yeah, it's true. And then we had some short sad backstory, well, not really backstory, but short info about old Neil, about how he actually wanted to follow the maxim of the mystery priors back in the good old days, but he was not really doing it the right way, so to say. So yeah, old Neil is too old now to actually digest a new potion or like get into a new potion because it's going to be dangerous for him. So he didn't even try. He stopped trying, basically trying to advance. He's just happy that he did not lose control, which is really good because he's been a Beyonder for ages, man. And that's it's gonna bite him in the ass later on, as we know. But yeah, so this was like some sort of foreshadowing, because even if I didn't know about old Neil losing control, I still would have thought, okay, this is suspicious that Cuttlefish is actually mentioning that old Neil didn't lose control, because especially now, because old Neil is a little bit dejected because now there's another youth over here that followed the maxim of his pathway, right, and advanced ahead of him. So I feel like it did give old Neil a little bit of depression, right? I'm not saying it's Klein's fault, but it is what it is. Anyway, Klein actually sensed, old Neil left, and he sensed that Captain Dunes will approach him, which is also why he's like saying, okay, my spiritual senses have been elevated after digesting the seer potion, because now he can sense when people are approaching before it actually happens. So Captain comes in and gives Klein a letter, and Klein's like, okay, weird, what is this? And he reads from who it's from. It's actually from Daxter Guderian, addressed to Mr. Hornassis. And I guess that's Klein's secret code name, Hornassis. So Klein actually reads the letter and finds out that Daxter Guderian is asking for an urgent meeting. And he's like, that's super weird. So he tells Captain what is inside the letter, and Captain's like, okay, I'm going to follow you to meet up with this guy because we don't know if it's a trap or not. Go get Leonard to watch over the Chance Gate for now, and let's go. So then Klein meets up with Daxter Guderian at the shooting range, and Daxter is like, Klein, I need to tell you something, dude. It's really, really, really important. Hood Eugene is acting insane. I know, it's crazy. He's at a mental asylum and acting insane. Who would have thought? But you guys know that Hood Eugene is actually there of his own volition, because he wanted, to practice his beyonder powers, basically, at the asylum without, having a PhD. So Daxter then tells Klein, okay, here is the telepathist potion. I actually got it from Hood Eugene himself, but I can't determine if it's real or not. So you gotta test it out yourself, bruh. And Klein's like, it's okay, I can find out if it's real or not because of the gray fog area. Of course, he didn't say that to Daxter because, it's a secret, right? But he did ask Daxter if he saw anyone come into contact with Hood Eugene. And Daxter's like, well, aside from the patients, I can't really be too sure. I'm not at asylum 24 hours, bro. I have a life. So, of course, he didn't tell that exactly that way. Klein's like, okay, I get what you're trying to say, but it might be that Hood Eugene is actually testing you. You should actually report this to the members of the Psychology Alchemist, just in case, right? And Daxter's like, okay, I will do that. And here is the formula. He gives Klein the telepathist formula. They had a short chat, and then Daxter left. Klein then went to Captain Dunes, who was watching from the distance, and was like, Captain, here's the information about the telepathist formula that the informant gave me, because he's so grateful that I've been helping him control the side effects of the potion. Totally not, because I convinced him to give it to me, right? And Captain Dunes like, damn, what the hell? And Klein also mentions to Captain Dunes that they kind of need to watch out for Hood Eugene at the mental asylum, and Captain's like, okay, I will actually send people at the mental asylum and put it under surveillance. You go back and guard the Chinese gate. And of course, before Klein left, he actually told Klein, with this formula, you actually won't need to have any more points. You don't need to accumulate any more meritorious achievements, so that you can directly receive the clown potion thanks to this formula, basically. And Klein's like, yay! GG! Okay, so chapter 156 is called Melissa Who Takes the Long View. So Klein does his thing. He actually goes to the Chinese gate, guards it, and then he goes home, and then he sleeps until noon, because again, he has to guard the Chinese gate till early in the morning. So when he wakes up, he sees Benson reading the newspaper and was like, hey, Melissa is preparing lunch today? And Benson is like, yeah, she has a guest visiting her today. And, I actually wanted to prepare the lunch and chat with her guest at the same time, but Melissa doesn't trust my cooking and took the guest into the kitchen with her. It's very rude. And you know what? When I read it, I was like, you know what, Benson? I totally feel you. I feel you because my sisters also does not trust my cooking. I am a great cook, kind of. I'm very experimental with my cooking, okay? I just remembered back a couple of weeks before Christmas, we were actually planning what we should be bringing to the Christmas dinner. And my sisters was like, oh, okay, I will bring salad and this and that. And I was like, oh, you guys want salad? I can totally bring the salad. Instead, I have this super good recipe that's like a cucumber salad, but it has, like peanut butter in it, because it's like this cucumber salad from Logan. If you know, Logan from TikTok. And I was like describing it to them, and they're like, Faye, cucumber salad with peanut butter? What the fuck? No, sister dear. Stay out of the kitchen. You don't have to bring anything. Just bring yourself. We're gonna do all the cooking. And I was like, the fuck, rude. But still, I was like, you know what? If you guys don't want my cucumber salad, fine. But I will bring cake with me. And they're like, you don't have to bring anything, Faye. Seriously, stay out of the kitchen. Please. I was like, no, I will bring a mango float with me, and you guys are going to love it because I've done this a couple years ago, like back when we all still lived together. I've done it for summers because Philippine summer mango float is like the perfect summer cake. So I was telling them, oh, I will bring it with me, and they're like, okay, if you want to, but just calm down with the recipes. Because again, I like to experiment. And you know what, whose cake was eaten, like all of it? My mango float was the only cake that was finished. Okay, and they also bought a lot of desserts with them. Okay, so take that. I'm not a bad cook, I'm just very experimental. I like to add some random stuff here and there because, I get bored sometimes. Anyway, that's beside the point. Klein finds out that Melissa's guest is actually Elizabeth, and it's like, oh yeah, Elizabeth, I know her. And Ben's like, yeah, we met her at the birthday party of her other friend Selena. And Klein's like, yeah, totally. And he was thinking to himself, I actually met that girl a lot of times actually. So Melissa and Elizabeth come to the living room or dining room, whatever, with the food, and they greet Klein. It's like, oh, Klein, you're here already. You're awake. And you know what? When I was reading this, because it was mentioned that Elizabeth was also wearing an apron, I was like, is this going to be some sort of romantic chapter? Kind of, So I was like, what is going on here? Because I was also feeling that Elizabeth was a little bit disappointed that Klein is awake already, because I feel like she wanted to be there when Melissa wakes up Klein to tell him that it's lunchtime, right? I feel like she wanted to see Klein a little bit sleepy and ruffled, You guys know how Klein tend to sleep, right? We saw him unbutton his shirt, in the donghua. Sorry. I'm fangirling a little bit. So anyway, Melissa explains that Elizabeth is here to help them out to find the maidservant thingy, because again, Elizabeth's family, they hire a maidservant, and she thought that it would be good to have Melissa advise them. I mean, Elizabeth advise them, right? And she tells Klein and Benson that she made a list of what she wants from a maidservant, and that they are healthy, hardworking and responsible, good at cooking, this is important, quiet, not rowdy, simple family background, and of course that they look ordinary. That's like the sixth part. And when I read that, I was like, is she thinking that the maidservant may or may not seduce her brothers? I have a feeling that that's what she's low-key thinking, right? So she told those requirements to them, and Klein and Benson was like, oh, damn, okay, we thought that you didn't want this. And Melissa's like, well, you guys voted for all of this. You guys got the majority of the vote, so I thought I might as well, add my 2 cents in, because if you want to do things properly, you have to do it yourself, basically, right? So they're like, So she's like, do you guys have anything more to add? And Client's Ben's like, no, this is fine. So anyway, after lunchtime, they actually goes to the Tingen Family Servant Assistance Association, basically. And they get in there, and there's this clerk who's like asking, hey, how may I help you? And Benson, being the oldest over there, he was pushed forward by Klein and Melissa and was like, we need to hire a maidservant. And she asked, oh, do you have any requirements? And for a second, Benson blanked out and just listed the one important thing that they want, which is that they want the maidservant to be good at cooking. And then we find out that it's actually not a thing that maidservants tend to be. There are no excellent cooks among the maidservants that they have right now. And she's like, why don't you guys hire a chef instead? Because apparently cooking is not part of the maidservants training regime that they give in this association. So they're like, oh, well, that's regrettable. So instead of finding a chef, they're like, well, how about we actually just find someone who is willing to learn how to cook? Would that be possible? So yeah, they did their thing. They waited, they looked at all this information about the maidservants, yada yada yada. They talked about more requirements, this and that. And yeah, so during their wait, Elizabeth and Klein was actually talking to each other, and Elizabeth asked Klein if he has any requirements for the maidservants that he wants. And you know what? When she was asking that, I was imagining her tucking her hair behind her ears, being, low-key flirty, because I feel like she's also trying to figure out what type of girl Klein wants. So she asked Klein, how would you choose the maidservants that you want? And like, oh, well, I will just divine the best person for it to become our maidservant. And she was a little bit stunned upon hearing that, because again, she is fishing for Klein's type of girl. This is so obvious to me. I don't know if you guys who are reading this, like the men, kind of figured that out, but it's so obvious to me. So she's like, oh, right, I totally forgot that you're a seer. So yeah, she and the Klein were whispering among each other because, again, divination stuff, talk. And Klein looks over and she sees Melissa looking at them with like suspicion. And Klein was thinking, oh shit, girl, sis, please don't misunderstand. We're just talking normally here, okay? That's what he was thinking. Anyway, after all the haggling with the clerk for the maidservant and this and that, because they were like, how about they come to our house and they cook a little bit for us so that we can test them if they're, good enough cooks so that we can teach them. They actually went back home. Elizabeth went on her own way to her own house, so the siblings went home together. And Klein, before he can go upstairs and lock himself in his room, Melissa's like, Klein, wait a second, we need to talk. And he's like, what? And Melissa is like, if you want to get engaged with Elizabeth, you have to work harder. Her father is an import merchant, and her mother is the daughter of a baronet. And Klein's like, wait, engage? What? How far are you looking into the future, girl? So yeah, that is how chapter 156 ends. It was like, girl, what the hell? What's going on here? Melissa, please. You don't have to worry about Klein and his love life. Leonard is like right there. Anyway, I really enjoyed the last chapter. I was very much amused with Melissa and her suspicion of Klein and her friend Elizabeth. But at the same time, I'm like, isn't Elizabeth like too young for Klein anyway? And yeah, and it's just so obvious that Elizabeth is crushing on Klein. And it was like, same girl. I mean, Klein is probably like super hot in this moment right now. He's totally her type. I get it. Like, if you think about it, Klein is like, he's a gentleman first and foremost. He's also very fit because of his his training regime with the knight, you know, and thanks to the Nighthawks. Also, he is also a scholar. He has the temperament of a scholar and a gentleman, and he is also pretty good looking, actually. I know that a lot that Klein himself thinks he's average, but no, Klein, you shut up. People have eyes. And yeah, so what do you guys think of this chapter? I feel like this is such a short chapter, and I'm starting to slur my words because I'm getting tired. But and yeah, before I go, please leave a like, subscribe, and a comment. It helps my channel out a lot. My commissions are open, and my Vision link is down in the description below. Check out my story Dreaming of Aurora if you have the time. And finally, thanks to my patrons Rovek, Vanarik, and Jval Javelitska for the support. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.